nobody likes feeling like it's a completely helpless situation. Like this happened and now I'm completely helpless and hopeless, and it's just like, that's it. He's gone and it was for nothing. At least if I can bring awareness, and even if it touches just one person, and one person can decide to get help because of it, one person can decide to not do what my brother did because of it, then it's already had a little more meaning than just kind of sitting at home and grieving and crying over it.
Hello and welcome back to this channel. My name is Frida Weisel, and here I explore various topics related to Judaism, New York City, the Yiddish language, and more. Today, I'm looking forward to talking to a budding young voice from this world, the YouTuber Mattel from Multisingual. Mattel speaks Hasidic Yiddish from a Hasidic background and is passionate about languages, especially sharing the Hasidic dialect of Yiddish, which it's often hard to find resources to learn. She does various kinds of videos, voiceovers to popular movies.
Ruhig. Ich kann mich nur nicht rasiert, Tante Fri.
Oh ja? Hast ausgelost.
Okay, verruhig euch noch. Gib mir noch eine Möglichkeit, sie mich entschuldigen.
Videos with multiple languages that are not often studied.
Learning a new language is hard, but if you start your way up from the bottom, you can and will master the depths of the language.
Travel vlogs in Yiddish.
Ik dacht op minstens, ik heb nog een beelden van de schild daar. Ik weet niet wie groot of klein. De Jiddische gehele van.
And even sharing very intimate details about, for instance, the loss of a family member.
In dem Video will ich reden wegen sich nehmen das Leben in Schwierigkeiten mit mentaler Gesundheit.
Thanks, Mattel, for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I was looking forward to talking to you. I'm really excited to see new voices from the Hasidic world sharing the Hasidic culture. I think that tells me it's a new day. The next generation is upon us. So I'm really excited to highlight your work, which I've been following recently. Before we begin talking about your work, do you mind telling us a little bit about where you're from, what your background is?
So I grew up in the Hasidic world. I went to Satmar until the second grade.
Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in upstate New York. I don't want to give out exactly where.
That's okay.
Because I still live like pretty close to the area just for safety reasons.
That's understandable.
But I did grow up in upstate New York, and then I switched to another Hasidic school. But it was, I don't know if everyone's familiar with the like levels of Hasidishness, but over there the women drove, so it was still like really Hasidish, but women were allowed to drive.
How come you made the switch?
It was my parents' decision, basically, and also like we just didn't fit in anymore in Satmar so much. Like my mom started wearing just like a band instead of like fully covered, or like it was certain very small things that seem very insignificant to someone from the outside, but I'm sure you understand the like big significance of wearing a band over your wig instead of like
a scar.
Or a hat. I think she had a hat before, so things like that kind of eventually led us to making the switch to a school that was still like very Hasidish, but you know, a lot more of like the moms also had like a band to cover, and then also like drove and like these.
And Satmar, sorry to interrupt you. To be clear, the Satmar schools don't allow the moms of their student body to drive. So that's the big difference. That your mom went to more liberal Hasidic school, sent you to a more liberal Hasidic school. Go on. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, that's basically it.
So what happened afterwards? Did you stay in that school for all your schooling, or did you make more transitions?
I made several more transitions. So I stayed there until the 6th grade. And I had a very good experience there, actually. I fit in very well with that crowd because of the level of like religiousness that my family was. We fit in very nicely, and I really enjoyed going to school there. And I think I had a lot in common also with my classmates, as in that all of us secretly watch movies, but and we all knew that the other ones also do, but the school wasn't supposed to know that any of us do, so we would all be able to secretly talk about it with each other, which is something I didn't have in summer, because I would watch secretly movies, but then I wasn't able to talk about it with my classmates, or this, like, obviously the school couldn't find out, but then there, we were all able to, like, whisper to each other about, like, a Disney movie we watched, and we all knew that the other ones also do, so, like, we had this kind of vibe going, which was really nice. So I stayed there until the 6th grade. But then my family was still kind of changing a little bit, and eventually it was just kind of we came to a point where we just didn't fit in there anymore. They were like, yeah, we see certain things that we don't we think maybe you're not the best fit for our school anymore, and we were like, yeah, we also see it, like there were certain
I see.
there were certain
So like the
things-
school spoke to your parents and said, we're not aligned religiously anymore. Wow.
Yeah, basically. And my parents also kind of were worried about certain things, like, you know, if I would still fit in the coming year, because our family was changing a little bit. And so it was just kind of decided by, like, mutually decided by my parents and the school and everyone that it was best if my sister and I switched out of there. So you probably also know about, like, how, like, even again, just like Satmar, like the very small things make a very big difference in how the school's represented. So they can't have someone who wears, let's say I wore knee socks and with very long skirts so that my skin wasn't showing, but things like that, like, represented the school as a school that the girls wear knee socks.
And they didn't want to stand for that. Like they didn't want to be
Yeah.
misrepresented.
Yes. So it's like that a lot in the Hasidic world with like certain groups stand for certain things, and that means everyone, like, you can switch groups if you want to represent a different thing, but you can't stay in the other group and represent that thing. It's just kind of how the Hasidic world works a little bit. So yeah, so then I switched to a Litvish middle school. And I stayed there for 6th and 7th grade.
Did you like it?
No, it was not a good fit. Because I was like
Why?
the only Hasidic kid there, and and I didn't like feel like I was well represented in that school. Everyone had different customs. Everyone had different, like, even like Yiddish was seen as kind of like, it's like a lower class language in a certain way, because it was like, you know, Hasidim speak that, and like we're a Litvish school, so it was I feel kind of uncomfortable being the only like Hasidic kid in there.
How did you feel about Yiddish, by the way, at that point?
At that point, I basically stopped using it. I thought it was super uncool to speak Yiddish, so that was basically the point where I stopped using it and started forgetting a ton of Yiddish. And so like, even though I used it in the Hasidic school, like I wouldn't say with my friends I spoke Yiddish. With my friends I spoke English, but we had the first half of the day was just Yiddish, was like taught in Yiddish. We had Yiddish grammar class, Yiddish reading. Everything was very like centered around the Yiddish language the whole first half of the day. But then so even if I didn't speak it with my friends, it was still like halfway spoken at home, like kind of mixed Yiddish and English at home. And then but then when I switched to this like Litvish school, I kind of stopped using it for the most part. I mean, I probably still use certain words at home, like mixed in a couple of Yiddish words here and there. By 8th grade, I don't think I would be able to like put together like full paragraphs anymore in Yiddish if I wanted to write something.
Where did you go after the Litvish school?
So then I went to a school that's, I guess, considered modern Orthodox, or it's so it's a Beis Yaakov, but a more I guess it's known for being a more open-minded Beis Yaakov. And they very much focused on individualism, which was really great. They let me like express myself in how I want to dress. And I've always kind of had this funky style, so I like being able to show it off. And
how would you describe your style?
At this point, it's very inspired by the late Victorian and early Edwardian era. I particularly like fashion that kind of reminds me of that time, but I kind of have like a dark twist on it. and a little bit like a modern twist on it, like wearing just like one earring. So it kind of gives it's like modern feel to a more vintage thing. Yeah.
Okay, love it. Go on. So what happened? Did you finish all your schooling in Beis Yaakov? Was that?
Yeah. So I went there until the end of 12th grade.
Would you say, I think what I'm hearing, and I don't know if the viewer can hear it, is you went from a very, very strict, closed Hasidic world of Satmar, which is where I come from as well, one of the most closed worlds. Your parents moved you to more and more and more liberal spaces.
Yes.
Is that fair? And that was a lot of transition for you. Do you feel that that was difficult or interesting?
It was definitely difficult, especially the last switch, because even in the Litvish school, everything was super censored, like really censored. It was basically just as strict as the Hasidic school I'd been to before, just in a slightly different way. Like the rules were slightly twisted, but it was basically just as strict. So I switched straight from there, from like not knowing anything about the world, like not being able to consume most media. Like my parents didn't allow me to just browse the internet, even though they let me watch movies. They like picked out very appropriate movies for me to watch, and they would just like buy the DVD for me so I couldn't just scroll or anything, you know? So I went from that world where everything was like super controlled, and I basically knew nothing from outside world media, from like anything. I didn't even know like celebrities or music or like anything, to instantly like I got put into this Beis Yaakov where everybody was talking about everything. I remember like these girls talking about like how they thought Justin Bieber is so cute, and I'm like, what? What is that? Like, what is that? Wait, girls are talking about this kind of thing openly about a boy? Hold on, we're not supposed to talk about that. Yeah, so it was just
what
like,
kind of movies
super
did you watch?
Growing up, I watched like
on the down low, like that your parents bought DVDs.
Yeah, I loved watching like Curious George and Berenstein Beers, and like that was when I was like, yeah, I guess a bit younger. Yeah.
I watched some of your videos. You create dialogue for Disney movies. There's the scene in a church that I watched, which is it, The Hunchback of Notre Dame? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Is that what it is that I'm thinking
Yes.
of that you perform? Okay, so that is a romance. Did you watch that as a child?
I didn't watch that one as a child, no. My parents let me watch some Disney movies, but not all of them. So like my favorite movie growing up was The Lion King, but that is very appropriate. But the one that's in a church, no, I couldn't watch that one.
I see. Interesting. I was wondering if these have a connection to your childhood. So what's really interesting to me about you is that, as I see it, you're making Yiddish cool again. And I'm not talking about secular Yiddish, which has its own culture, but Hasidic Yiddish. I grew up in Satmar also thinking Yiddish is very uncool, and the cool kids spoke English, and you wanted to speak more English to show how cool and with it you are. Like, what's really interesting or exciting for me is the beginning of an embrace of this culture by the native population that live it, right? So like with your content, creating content in this language and saying it's cool after all. I love that. I'm wondering how you got, like, what happened after Beis Yaakov up to here? What was your journey? First of all, do you mind if I ask how old you are?
I'm 23. So I was considering going to college for art. Actually, I did go for like a week. And then I was just like, this is not really what I love to do. This is not what I want to do with my life. This doesn't bring me the kind of satisfaction and joy I want in a future career. And I know it's only been a week, but I know what I want to do, and it's languages. This was right after quarantine, and I basically spent all my time locked in learning languages 8 hours a day, and it brought me a lot of joy, and I decided this is what I want to do with my life.
Where were your parents with all of this? Were they supportive?
Yes, they wanted to first make sure that, obviously, that I didn't just have like a moment, like, are you sure this is what you want to do? Okay, I mean, we'll support you if, this is really what you want to do. So it's basically how it went down.
What about your friends from Beis Yaakov? Did they think it was unusual to study languages?
I've had some interesting responses, but most people just respond with, "No way, that's so cool," or sometimes I get, "Wait, that's a real language."
Like of what language?
I had that of like Norwegian and Finnish, Icelandic, basically the languages that are lesser known in the Orthodox Jewish world, because nobody really thinks about it, at least.
Wow, that's very cool. What happened like after seminary in terms of the expectation to go on to be a Beis Yaakov typical graduate? For instance, to maybe go to seminary or get married and start a family. Did you feel that pressure?
So I didn't go to seminary. I knew that I would probably hate it. I mean, it just doesn't suit my personality, and everyone who knows me knows it wouldn't suit my personality to just go spend a year with a bunch of people and party up and have more classes. And I struggled sometimes, like especially in the Hebrew classes, like the Judaic subjects. I would like sometimes struggle a bit, like especially there's a lot of like Torah reading and then dissecting what I read in the Torah, like all that stuff. I was really awful at it. So like having another year of that wouldn't benefit me another way. And I don't like crowded spaces. I don't like living with a million people. I don't like being social for a week straight or 2 weeks straight, or not having any space to myself. I would probably go out of my mind if it came to living in a seminary. I like having my social interactions more like planned out and like
One-on-one.
Yeah, just little excursions. I'll go out with my friends, and then it'll be for one evening, a couple hours, and then I'll come back and be able to like breathe and then go out again and then breathe. I just can't live with a bunch of people like that.
You sound like an introvert.
I am.
Yeah,
I am.
That makes sense. I'm trying to understand how someone who starts in Satmar ends up on your path now at 23. You sound like a typical young adult to me in your exploration of early adulthood, in the sense that you're like exploring, you seem to be traveling. Are you seeing yourself on the path of a Beis Yaakov graduate, or are you expected to be on that path, or is that question inappropriate and you're uncomfortable
you can
with
definitely
it?
ask. I don't mind answering that, but like I honestly just don't care. I know some people are expecting me to be on that path. There was this certain layout of what a Beis Yaakov graduate's life is supposed to look like, but it's not their life. So why should I cater my life to people who have these expectations when I'm not going to be happy with it? I know it doesn't suit me. I know that getting married much younger for me would have basically like it wouldn't have been a good thing for me. I just needed more time to get out, get to know myself, just explore the world a little. I don't know, it just wouldn't work for me to get married any younger at the expected Beis Yaakov age. And for those who don't know, it can be anywhere between like 18 and 20, 21, something like that, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it just wouldn't work for me. So yeah, and I honestly just don't care what people think.
Do your parents pressure you?
No, not really, no.
But
They
I think we discussed this earlier, but just for the viewers, you're from, right?
Yes.
Okay. Which means you like, I see you're traveling and you, for instance, observe kosher. You want to speak to how you do that?
Yeah. So I travel around Europe mostly.
Right now, tell us where you are.
Yeah, I'm in Helsinki right now. I spend a lot of time in Helsinki, so I already basically know which products are kosher, where to get kosher meat. They have like one freezer here that's in one specific supermarket that has kosher meat. Um, they have, and then of course I arrive to a place, I kosher the dishes, the utensils, and then I kind of set half of it aside in one cabinet for meat, another half of it aside in one cabinet for dairy, and I basically have to cook all my meals myself since like in America there's freezers that are packed with ready meals or at least parts of ready meals kosher, but here I basically have to create everything from scratch for myself. So that's definitely more challenging in a certain way. But and then there is also certain European cities have kosher restaurants. Like in Prague, I was able to eat out for at least for one meal a day. I was like, okay, I get a little break from cooking. And then yeah, and there's kosher lists in most European countries from which products are kosher in like their everyday supermarkets, which ones have been checked, even if they don't have a symbol on them, because there just isn't enough Jews in some countries to like actually stamp the products that are kosher. So a rabbi will check it and then just make a list of which products are, and then they just kind of publish that list on the internet so people can access it. Like in Lithuania, where I just was, they just had a list, and this cheese is actually kosher. You won't find the symbol on it, but it is. Yeah. And then if I travel a place where there's like nothing, like when I went to like on a heritage trip kind of to where my family comes from in Mezlaborce, Slovakia. In Yiddish it's Myślabric. So then there was like so little. I was able to get some like canned products, and I basically had like paper plates, and like everything was cold, and I just like plooped some like bread down with some canned beans, and I was like, okay, well, this is what I'm eating now for the next 3 days, so great.
Wow. That doesn't sound like the most gourmet meal, but
No.
bread is bread. I can eat bread anytime. I don't know about the beans.
Yeah, I can always get like fresh fruit. I can always get, well, just like plain salted potato chips are, for the most part, kosher. So, just I basically live on like fresh fruit, potato chips, and like bread and whatever source of protein I can get. That's yeah,
Delicious. You travel by yourself?
yeah,
You enjoy traveling alone?
yeah. I love it.
Solo traveler?
Yes.
I'm a tour guide and I get the solo female traveler very often my tours, and it's always interesting, their adventures. What do you do about Shabbos?
Other than the boredom, it's not that hard. Because I go to shul, A, because I get to meet people, B, because it takes out a chunk of the time, and C, because I really like connecting to these like really old synagogues that they have in Europe, and they all have such a rich history and and it just feels so special to be able to, you know, pray there. So, and usually I also, like Chabad almost always has an option for travelers to sign up for like Friday night and Shabbat day meals. So I usually do that as well. And I sometimes come out with some friendships from that, which is pretty great.
Oh, that's awesome. How come you're in Helsinki per se? You seem to be there more than anywhere else.
Yes, this is where I have been spending a lot of time. I kind of fell in love with the Finnish culture, and I really like how peaceful and quiet it is. In general, the culture is catered to introverts, which is really great for me. And the nature is really beautiful, and I would say it doesn't get hot here, but we've been having a heat wave now for a solid 2 weeks, but it doesn't last very long usually. I like cold weather. I like snow, and they have like 6 months of it here, so that's awesome. And I have a bunch of friends here, and I really love the Jewish community here. I feel like I'm already kind of integrated into the community.
Oh, that's lovely. I can't even imagine what the Jewish community in Helsinki is like. It must be small, right?
It's very small. Everyone kind of knows each other, which I find to be super cozy. That like it's a super cozy community. Everyone knows each other, and you can like tell if a person's missing 1 week from the minion. Like it's very obvious. And I also like about how all classes of like Judaism kind of come together and just it's there isn't this like grouping like there is in New York by level of religiousness. Like everyone doesn't matter if you keep Shabbos, if you keep kosher, if you don't, if you if you just don't eat pork, but you don't particularly but you mix meat and milk, but like there's certain people who keep different, but everyone just kind of comes together and prays, and it's not such a big deal. Everyone just kind of gets along and supports each other in the community.
Wow, sweet. Meanwhile, do you go back home to visit your folks?
Yes. Yeah.
What's that like? Are your parents like worried about you being all by yourself in Helsinki, or they're like, good on you, you're having fun? I'm just trying to guess.
It's a mix of both, because they support me coming here. They are really happy that I found a place that I really love and that I connect to, and that I can come back to. So they definitely cheer me on coming here. But at the same time, they're parents, so they're gonna worry a little bit. Is my baby okay? Like, is she doing okay? Is she sleeping well? Is she eating well? Is she going out? Is she, they're gonna worry and ask me just to make sure that, just the smallest things are like, what did you do today? Where are you? Like,
You recently went back home.
Yeah.
Was it this month?
Yeah, I just got back on Thursday.
Or was it like also a heat wave here in New York?
Yes. A bigger heat wave, because here a heat wave is when it's cool over there in the summer.
Yeah, it's been like walking in a steam room here in New York City. What got you to start a YouTube channel?
It didn't happen with so much intention, actually. I kind of fell into it. So it started when I was it was the last year of high school, so I was like maybe about to turn 18 or 18, that I decided I was going to try to translate the song Let It Go into Yiddish. And that was just for fun. And I just sat in class.
Frozen?
Yes. So
can it like sing it?
Oh, it's actually on my channel. It's like and I've made some changes to it. Like I kind of retranslated a little in my head since then, because my translations were not as good as they are now, because as I said, I forgot a lot of my Yiddish at that point. So I have to remember it. I have to remember the changes, because I'm not satisfied with the translation I have right now on the channel.
Should I? Oh no, because I can put it in here, or you can sing it live.
You could put it in later.
I'll put it in later. All right, let's play your translation of Frozen's Let It Go. Now.
I could have done a better job, but I mean, I couldn't have then, but my Yiddish has gotten so much better. I could have, now I'm thinking, I'm like, I would have changed that word, and maybe that would have been a more smooth translation, or I think the grammar is slightly off here. That's more like spoken Yiddish, but not really like formal, correct Yiddish. So like there's certain small tweaks I would have made. And especially like just the word let it go, I would probably say, I said like, I directly translated los is gein, but I think that could have been translated better, like los up, maybe.
Yeah, I hear that. That makes sense to me, because I think let it go, people might say los up as in the less literal version. I hear that.
So I would have sang it now, los up, instead of los is gein. So something like that.
Got it. Okay. We're learning. So go on.
So I decided I was just going to do it for fun. And I remember just sitting in class, and I was like so bored at school sometimes. So we had so many free periods. I just sat there. I was just translating it. And then at some point, I don't know when, or I just decided I was gonna record it, and then I was like, I already recorded it. Why don't I add it to the video? And then I added to the video, and I was like, let me just add subtitles. And I added subtitles, and I was like, this should be on the internet. So I decided to just post it on the internet. And I think the time I posted on the internet, I was probably 19. Took me a while to actually go through this whole process. And then I decided I'll just do another one. Just this was fun. I could do another one. So then I did another song from Disney. And then I think it was my dad actually who was like, you should start a YouTube channel. You seem to have a passion for Yiddish. Why don't you just start a YouTube channel? And yeah, so I did. I kept posting another song after another. And then after like 5, 6 songs, something like that, he made just like, I think maybe an introduction into Yiddish, or just like some very simple, basic Yiddish video. And yeah, I took it from there.
Wow. And now what's your content encompass?
So I do a lot of just grammar videos and vocabulary videos for Yiddish. So like I'm gonna be releasing soon just basic words and phrases in Yiddish, and how to use past, present, and future in Yiddish as well. That's also coming up. And I also do it for other languages, like basic German phrases, or how to use, I think I did, how to use verbs in the present tense in German, things like that. And then I've also done like travel vlogs completely in Yiddish.
Wow, I've watched that. That's very sweet. By the way, you have a dog?
No, you're probably hearing the neighbor's dog.
Got it. I wanted to ask you earlier if you have a pet, and I assumed you didn't, but then I heard the barking. Yeah, I was wondering if you have a pet with you. So I was curious who your audience is. Who watches this kind of language content?
So I do have a lot of Hasidic Yiddish speakers, or even just Yiddish speakers in general. I get people who learned it later in life also commenting. They comment, oh, I learned this later in life, or I'm learning Yiddish now, I'm starting now because like my bubby, my Zaidi, my whatever spoke it. And then I also get, for my other videos, I also get people from the country of the language I'm making a video about often commenting. So like I did the history of the German language in German, or the history of the Finnish language in Finnish. And then I had a bunch of Germans and a bunch of Finns commenting on the videos. So yeah.
It's very cool.
Yeah. And then like I'll look at you can see like the demographics of the video as well. And I'll just randomly see this like a country that I wouldn't even suspect that has like a really high viewing rate, like Vietnam. Like, who in Vietnam is watching my videos?
Yeah. YouTube now has this like dubbing where they do your video in different languages. Have you tried it?
No.
Oh, so like let's say they'll take this video and overlay over our voices an automatic voice that speaks, let's say, in German. And they have it in only a handful of languages, maybe in 10 or 12 languages. They don't have it in Hebrew. They don't have it in Yiddish, which are the languages that a lot of people look for translation with my videos. They do have it in German, which is also a primary translation language. But it's like interesting that they have it in Hindi. Is it Hindi? I think that's the name of the language. I don't know why I'm suddenly not sure.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't even think I have any viewers from that, from who speak Hindi on my like channel, and a couple of languages, I think maybe Korean, that I have never seen really any representation of this demographic in my content. And I'm like, wow, I'm surprised that they're not translating more popular languages, but instead they're doing Korean, which is
Yeah, I
really
mean, Hindi is one
interesting.
of the most spoken languages in the world because India is the most populated country right now in the
Yeah.
world. So it makes sense, I guess, that they would do that one. Korean, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know what to tell you about that one.
Who knows what the technical story behind it is to make it happen. They don't have Chinese, which is also
Really?
yeah,
But it's
Mandarin.
like,
No,
but that's what?
I know. It's very, I don't know what made them decide to dub in certain languages. I was looking at it. I found it really interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah. But I had fun looking at your own like playfulness with various languages, which I really enjoyed. How are you learning Yiddish, by the way? How are you improving your Yiddish?
A lot of it is by asking people who speak a better Yiddish than me, just how do you say this? This is a word I've never had to use before in my life, or I've always just mixed in the English right here. And I want to be able to speak a pure Yiddish on my channel. I don't want to mix in I don't want to mix in English words so much when I'm like making a vlog, or especially if I'm making a video that's meant to be completely in Yiddish. Like when I told I think it was the story of Megillus Esther in Yiddish. I think I did one video where I say the entire story, but completely in Yiddish. And I wasn't going to mix in any English words. So then I would just like call up my grandma and be like, hey, how do you say this in Yiddish? Or ask my dad or ask my mom, because they went to Satmar their whole lives. So they definitely had it drilled into them a lot more than I did. And a lot more like higher vocabulary, because they didn't teach these like really high vocabulary words to fifth graders as much as they would like to my mom when she was in 11th grade, you know. So yeah.
That's very sweet. It's really nice when you have parents that can help you with like a language you're studying.
Yeah.
There's something else you posted about on your YouTube channel, which I talked about in the introduction, and it's actually how I found you. I don't know if you're comfortable talking about it. If you're not, that's okay. You were talking about the loss of your brother. Do you feel comfortable telling us why you decided to share that and speak to that in Yiddish?
Yeah, of course. I posted it just so I can spread the message and spread awareness about it. So definitely want to talk about it. So yeah, I thought that this topic does need more awareness. For those of you who didn't watch it, my brother took his life almost 5 months ago now. He was 15, almost 16. And I know there are a lot of people who go through the same thing, losing a sibling, friend, parent, relative like that. And a lot of people who are struggling with it themselves. And I think not only worldwide, but especially in the Hasidic community, within the Hasidic world, there isn't enough representation of this. It isn't enough talked about, and it's often very hidden, or it's very often kind of washed over. Like, oh, this person died from a heart attack. This person just didn't wake up. One of their organs just failed, or car crash, or I don't know. It just, unless it's done in a public place, then everyone will be talking about it. So I wanted to kind of bring awareness that this does happen, and people do struggle, and there is help even in the Hasidic world, and there is more healing coming about now. I have seen in the Hasidic world a lot more healing being done. A lot more mental health awareness, a lot more from the older generation kind of going back and healing some of the damage, some of the generational stuff that has been passed on since the Holocaust, which is really great. And I think we definitely a lot more talk about mental health in this community. So I did it in Yiddish, so it would appeal to this community, to Hasidim, because there's something much more comforting about hearing it in your own language, in the language you're comfortable with, you're familiar with, and these are words that they can maybe the language they talk to themselves in, or or have their own monologues in, and it's when you hear it in this language that you're so familiar with, maybe you're more likely to get the message that it's okay, you're not wrong. If you're struggling, like nothing's wrong with you, you just need help, and it's a sickness, um and just like any other sickness, you can heal from it, and you just need the right medicine.
What was the feedback you got to the video?
I did get a lot of people sharing their stories, other people who have lost loved ones this way. I had several people actually saying that they're struggling right now, and I had some people sharing their advice. So like you said, this and this and this can maybe help a person going through this. Can I add to that and say I struggled with this at some point, and this and this and this would have helped me at this point, which I think is also really great. So other people pitching in what could have helped them, because it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. I think that's also really great. So it's basically doing exactly what I was hoping it would do: bring more people together and get people to just feel like they're not alone.
Do you feel like your use of Yiddish, your Yiddish language, has allowed you to better communicate in the aftermath of this terrible loss?
Yeah,
Because
I
it's
would
been
say
for
so.
you personally an important part of dealing with the stages of grief, like posting something like that.
Yeah, it definitely helped me. Nobody likes feeling like they're just like it's a completely helpless situation. Like this happened, and now I'm completely helpless and hopeless, and it's just like that's it. He's gone, and it was for nothing. At least if I can bring awareness, and even if it touches just one person, and one person can decide to get help because of it, one person can decide to not do what my brother did because of it, then it's already had a little more meaning than just kind of just sitting at home and grieving and crying over it. So yeah.
Can I ask how your parents were about your sharing, like you talking about it? Was it like something that was helpful to them as well?
So I definitely got their permission first. I didn't want to publicize anything they weren't comfortable with, since it is their kid. And um, and they wanted to make sure that they like wanted to read it over the script, just to make sure that the correct message gets across. The like, we just want to make sure that it's just everything is smooth and everything is well said and clear. Yeah, and maybe if I missed like a little point, they were like, hey, maybe you should like throw in this, maybe like switch the order over here. They were like really helping me like fine tune the script to make sure it is like the utmost best possible. And even just a couple of like Yiddish grammar errors that I kind of said in a more colloquial Yiddish that kind of were like, I think that's more like correct grammatically, and they kind of helped me with that. Especially my dad, like he was like very invested in this. And yeah, they were definitely supportive of it. They but not all of my family members have watched it, because for some of them it's too painful to watch such a video. Some of them have, some of them haven't. Especially since at the end I show his picture, and I know that can be hard for some people in mourning. And I know one of my friends texted me afterward, I just watched your video, and when the picture came up at the end, I cried. So I know that's touching to some people.
But this is the last thing I just want to touch on briefly on this topic, which is so big and so heavy, obviously, and I appreciate so much that you're sharing, and I'm hoping I'm not making you feel uncomfortable. I just want to know, are your parents like involved in the issue, or you or family members in the issue of suicide in the Hasidic community? Like, what's happening with the issue in general?
Yeah. So my parents are working on starting an organization to help parents of a struggling child. I have to check up on them exactly when the release date is going to be, but I know they've been working on it. Because a lot of the time parents feel very, very helpless when they're watching a child struggle and they just don't know what to do. They try this, they try that, they try encouraging, pressuring, maybe going to therapy, maybe putting them on medication, maybe this, maybe that. They try, maybe he just needs some space, maybe she needs some of this, maybe, and it's just like you get lost. And I know they felt it definitely because they wanted to do everything they possibly could to help him. And a lot of other parents have spoken to them and said they went through the same thing. They've connected with other parents who have also lost a child to suicide. And everyone had the same thing. They just didn't know what to do. And they wish they would have had another parent there to support them through it, another parent of a struggling teenager. So they're going to start an organization. Well, they're starting it. It's in the process. Yeah, to connect parents of teenagers going through it, and maybe they'll be able to help each other, guide each other through it. Maybe this worked. This got my teenager out of the room for a couple of minutes. You could try that one with yours, or just moral support. Maybe just something, to and it would make a big difference for the parents and for their children who are struggling.
Well, may they have a lot of hatzlacha, and may it be a blessing to your brother's memory.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Can we try to go out on a more, like, I don't know, lighter note, maybe, by hearing what you cooked for today? Maybe you can tell it to us in various languages.
What do you mean?
What did you cook? Like, tell us in Yiddish, or tell us what you made for dinner.
Oh, okay.
Just so we play with your kosher and languages as our wrap up.
Okay. I'm gonna talk about yesterday since I have not cooked dinner yet today.
Okay, that's fair.
That will be after this. Nächten habe ich gekocht Tunafisch ich habe es gegessen mit Ras, Broccoli in Gerine Bundlich.
Delicious and healthful. Can you say something like that in another language?
Yeah. I guess I could say in Finnish, Eilen Masun, tonikala pihvin, riisien kanssa ja parsakaali ja vihreä vihreän pavujen kanssa.
Wow, that was so cool. I didn't understand a word. You could have said anything, but that sounded really cool. Are you also studying other Jewish languages?
I'm not studying, but I have made some videos briefly talking about other Jewish languages like Ladino and Judeo-Italian, Sephardic, Judeo-Greek.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for everything you shared. That was delightful. The tuna fish sounds really delicious. Good luck with cooking tonight. I'm going to link your channel in the video description, and I hope and encourage everyone to check out your work, and I look forward to seeing what you do in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And thank you to the viewers and the podcast listeners and everyone. Bye-bye.